You are listening to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast. I'm Andrew Stillwell, and we've got a slightly different formatted show this week with an on-location interview. We're deep in the Halloween season at Coaster101, and several members of our team have been visiting parks and Halloween haunts across the country, so be sure to check those out at Coaster101.com for their reviews and write-ups. But last weekend, I had the chance to visit SCarowinds at my home park of Carowinds for the first time since 2018, and I got to experience their 5 haunted mazes, 8 scare zones, and 3 live shows, and selfishly, there's a really good review on Coaster101.com that you should check out for sure. But I had the opportunity to sit down with Ryan Allen, who is Carowinds manager of live entertainment. He oversees not only Scarowinds, but any special event or live production at the park. We're talking WinterFest, Grand Carnival, any of their live shows. But sitting down with Ryan was awesome. He and I talk a little bit of everything, his history in the industry, some Grand Carnival, some WinterFest, but the majority of our conversation is rooted in everything that makes Scarowinds tick, from the mazes to the creation to the live shows to his team. Really interesting conversation, so we invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the interview. So I'm here with Ryan Allen, who is the manager of live entertainment at Carowinds. Ryan, how's it going?
I am great, Andrew. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast today.
This is it's a very busy time here at Carowinds. You and I, we just walked the park here a little bit ago. Obviously, full in the throes of Scarowinds. We've got WinterFest coming up, as you put it to me, over the weekend in 7 hours. It'll be a little bit later than that.
Maybe 8.
But yeah, we've got WinterFest starting in November. But I did want to talk to you on the podcast, just given that we are in the spooky season, as it were, kind of about what goes into the creation of a haunt and live entertainment and things like that. But for those of our listeners who may not know the name Ryan Allen, and why wouldn't they know the name Ryan Allen? What's your background in themed entertainment? I know we were talking a little bit before the show that you've kind of been at this for about 15 years in different capacities, but what's your personal story?
So, my personal story, the reason that I love making themed entertainment is because I like giving people an escape. So the reason I do all of this is because when I was 13, my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And before he passed away, we went to Walt Disney World for our final family vacation. And I felt really safe there. I felt really taken care of there. Little things that, like, I now know are part of the job blew my mind. The chef came out and asked my dad what he wanted to eat because the chemotherapy had messed up his taste buds. We were in a far end of the hotel, and my mom asked them to move us a little bit closer so that we could get to the bus to get to the parks easier. And they did it, no questions asked, and moved our stuff for us, which was, again, their job. I know now, but again, as a 13-year-old little boy from Goochland, Virginia, I was blown away by it. And then I went to King's Dominion every weekend as a kid. I was a season pass holder. I watched all of the shows. That's the era when Paramount was running the parks, and everything was Nickelodeon, and I wanted to be part of all of it. And so my first job ever, I started at King's Dominion as a costumer who also swung into the Nickelodeon Celebration Parade. And I was totally taken. And I tried to get out of this world for a little bit. And I was like, I want a 9 to 5 and a normal job, and that didn't work for me. So I worked at King's Dominion for 4 seasons. I loved it. I got to learn a lot there. Then I got to work for Disney for 7 years total. Some of that time was at Radio Disney in Richmond, Virginia. I tell people all the time, I got to bring magic to places that didn't have castles. So I really loved doing that, getting to celebrate things like Hannah Montana and High School Musical and the Jonas Brothers. And then I worked at Walt Disney World for a few years. I was on the parades team at Magic Kingdom, as well as the Atmosphere Entertainment team at Epcot. So all those shows that happen around World Showcase, I got to take care of some of those folks, including Turtle Talk with Crush over at the Seas with Nemo and Friends. And that taught me so much. And then I went on ships. I was the character manager on board the Disney Dream and the Disney Fantasy. And that was a life-altering experience for me. And then I went out with Holland America for a year and a half or so. And I got to see 63 different countries within a year and a half, which I'm very privileged to say that. And now I'm here at Carowinds, and I've been here since 2017. I came in, actually, ironically, this time 4 years ago, right? Middle of October. I got to see as they wrapped up Haunt that year, and then I was handed WinterFest without knowing I was being handed WinterFest. And I vividly remember all of the things that I learned in those first few months here at Carowinds, and I've worked through those pieces with my team as we've grown and as we've shifted and evolved. But yeah, that's why I do this, and that's a bit of my story. I think that theme parks and themed entertainment really have an opportunity to connect with people, and I love doing that. I say this all the time. I know I said this too when we walked. While I'm managing live entertainment, my job is to tell stories. Whether that story is a maze like Tooth Fairy or a small show like the Ramblers that we did over the summer with our friend Windish Production, like my job is to tell stories and to make sure that people see their stories seen on our stages and in our parks. So
I got it. And, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but in your role as manager of live entertainment, what are the types of things you oversee at Carowinds?
That is a loaded question. If it's a parade, it's on my plate. If it's a haunt or a scare zone or a haunted maze, it's on my plate. If it's a stage show, it's on my plate. I'm really lucky. I've got a fabulous team who help me put all the puzzle pieces together, but I get to be the puzzle master, basically, and make sure that the puzzle pieces are what I want them to be. I'm in charge of the costume shop, the decor team, the technical team, the set build team, the actors and performer team, the festival operation team. So there's a lot of things on my plate, and again, all of those things I really love that I get to help connect people and help provide new experiences for people.
Okay. Before we get into Halloween, obviously, like I mentioned, we're in the throngs of SCarowinds, the 20 years of fear here at Carowinds. I do want to touch a little bit on earlier this season, Grand Carnival came to Carowinds, and we have a past podcast episode where I talked about Grand Carnival and everything that kind of went along with it, and there's definitely an article on Coaster101.com, so be sure to check that out. Going back to earlier this summer, how was Grand Carnival received by guests at Carowinds?
I think our guests had a grand time, pun intended. Carnival, for our sister parks that opened it in 2019, they saw massive returns on their investment. And by that I mean not just dollar amounts, but guests were returning, guests were extending their nights, guests weren't coming until a little bit later in the day so they could stay for Carnival. Those are the things that entertainment is supposed to do, right? It is very rare, with the exception of a children's show, that I have entertainment that starts much before 1 or 2, right? This summer was a little bit different due to our operating calendar, but with a 10 o'clock close, it's my job to try to hold people here a little bit longer. Carnival did that. It was an over-the-top, marquee event, and I think our guests really enjoyed it. I think they enjoyed it. It almost felt like summer WinterFest, if that makes sense. Everything was decadent and rich and grand, honestly. And so by being grand and being over the top, we really were able to transition a portion of the park that sometimes doesn't get a lot of love, right? Our Northgate and Celebration Plaza area of the park kind of exists. Unlike Kings Island and Kings Dominion, who have beautiful entries on International Street, and even Worlds of Fun, who have a beautiful entry plaza. Our experience is a little bit different, and I think that we don't always have the opportunity to celebrate that area. And so I'm glad we were able to with Grand Carnival. Okay.
I loved it. It was, I wish, and this is circumstances notwithstanding, but I wish we had been able to get that parade kind of at night. I know it's the early park calendar. Once, I'm assuming that's going to continue. I'm watching you nod right now. I don't know if this has been confirmed or not, but once we get that parade at nighttime, I think it's going to be a absolute further home run than it already was. It's going to be a grand slam as opposed to a regular home run.
Absolutely, yeah. And, I think that's the piece, right? It is our hope that in 2020, we're still working through exactly what operating calendars look like and closing days and times and all of that magic. But what we really hope is that we can bring the parade in the evening. That event and festival is really made for the nighttime.
Yes.
Right? The other piece too, right? It is, even at 5 o'clock when the festival kicked off, it was still 105 degrees. There were some nights where we stepped off the parade at 7. No, at 8. That's when we stepped off the parade at 8. And it was still 106 degrees heat index. And so we had to take care of our performers differently because of that. Hopefully by putting it in the evening, we'll be able to not only give you the full lighting spectacle of the piece of the parade, but also be able to include those full costume pieces as well, because there's some costumes that light up that you didn't get to see. So hopefully we'll be able to do that in 2022.
I love it. Well, speaking of events that go bump in the night, how about that for a segue?
That was nice.
That was good. SCarowinds. Again, I mentioned earlier, it's the 20th year of SCarowinds here at Carowinds. And this year you've got 6 new experiences. You've got 1 new scare zone, 2 new scare mazes, and 3 new live shows. But for those of our guests who are not local to the Carolinas, and shout out to everybody who listens who's not. Because,
hi guys, hey y'all.
What can you kind of give us the grand tour of SCarowinds, kind of what's going on with SCarowinds?
Yeah, so like you said, SCarowinds is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, and we really wanted to make sure we celebrated in the biggest and best way possible. So we have five scare mazes. Two of those are brand new this year, which is a massive undertaking. We have 8 scare zones. 2 of those are new-ish. Not fully new, but reconceptualized, which is great. And like you said, those 3 new nighttime shows. For us, SCarowinds really is a great opportunity for our guests to be transported to somewhere new and different and exciting. And this year, I think we really did that. So one of our new mazes, the Reaping, is a corn maze, which most haunts have. Everyone has a corn maze. But we really took a turn on it to not be like a scarecrow, murderous farmer attraction. And it really is supposed to feel like the corn is coming at you, that you are in a claustrophobia hallway full of corn for the entire path. We were able to use the Rip-Roaring Rapids queue. It's an attraction that we retired a few seasons ago. But the space is still there, and it works beautifully. And the nighttime experience for that attraction is so just cool. I think cool is the best way to put it. Our technical team's been able to fill the space with fog and use some cool lighting effects that really trick the mind into not quite knowing where you're going or what you're doing. We've been able to provide an experience for our handy-capable guests as well, which we really love being able to do. All of our attractions are handy-capable, accessible, but that was a challenge for us as the queue for Rip-Roaring Rapids is a very stair-heavy experience, so we had to make some changes, make some things work there. The Tooth Fairy, which is our first brand new maze since Steps of Darkness opened in 2017, is something I'm really, really proud of. We had a maze for a few years called Urgent Scare, which was a hospital-themed attraction. After the past year and a half, we did not feel it was appropriate to scare people in that way, as the pandemic has really changed the way that people think about their health, and perhaps have had families or loved ones who were in hospitals for extended periods of times due to the pandemic, and that is not a thing that we wanted to celebrate here. That was already scary enough, right? I said this to you when we were walking through the attraction, but one of the things as a haunt producer I also have to be aware of is not only how to scare people, but also how to be aware of people's very real life scary things, right? We want to make sure that we're putting you in a place of fantasy that scares you, not a place of reality that scares you. My friends, for instance, they came over the weekend, and one of them is deathly afraid of dentists and would not go in the Tooth Fairy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's a thing that is both exciting and very real for people, right? So that's one of our other new maze attractions. Then again, those 2 new-ish zones, Raven's Nest, which is our Edgar Allan Poe themed attraction. We had a small version of that in 2019 in front of the Panda Express area of the park. And it read really nicely in that space, so we wanted to make it a full proper space. And then we moved what used to be Fleet Street into a new area of the park right under Nighthawk, and it is called Ripper Alley. We've given it a bit of a new theme, changed some of the storyline. Fleet Street was a very steampunk experience, and steampunk is a really beautiful look, but it's a tough scare, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Robots aren't necessarily scary. Contraptions aren't necessarily that scary. So we went back to the roots of what London was, which was Jack the Ripper. And so we've given our that attraction a very Sweeney Todd vibe. Everything's ghosted out a little bit. There's lots of red blood, lots of red costume pieces. So those are our 2 new-ish zones, as I say. And then the 3 new shows. So we, again, our friend Mike Windish, who gave us the Uprights in 2019 and in 2021, he brought in a ghouling piano show for us. So we've got 2 talented pianists who are playing some Halloween favorites in our Fear Garden. It's very similar to a beer garden, but just a little spookier. And again, that's a great place, too, for our guests who maybe don't love getting scared repeatedly, who just want a place to reset themselves. That's a great place to do it. That's a great place to sit. We brought out some beautiful patio furniture. You can have a bit more of a casual experience there. You can sing along. You can have a beer. You can enjoy yourself. Over in Bloodyard, we brought in a new show called Heartbeats. That is a DJ go-go dance sort of show, just to keep the energy moving in that space. And then one of the brand new shows that I'm so very proud of stars our new icon character, Queen Scaleritis, and her show, The Queen's Ball, which I am so very proud of, and I can't wait to talk to you about.
Oh, yes. I was at SCarowinds last weekend. I got to go through all 5 of the mazes, all 8 of the scare zones, and see all 3 of the of the new live shows, and there's I say great because I wrote it, but there's a good review.
It's pretty good. I'm not going to lie. It's pretty good, Andrew.
All right. Well, thank you. I have your approval. This is good. But yeah, check that out on Coaster101. It should be near the top of the page if you're listening to this when it comes out. But I want to talk kind of about maze development a little bit. It's a big, all these haunts around the country and around the world, they have these mazes. But you and I were talking a little bit. You've got a relatively small team and resources that a park, like an Orlando park has significantly higher resources.
Yes,
I'll put it as nicely as that way.
Yeah, that's an appropriate way to put it. Absolutely.
Without naming names. With you guys, how does maze development begin? Obviously, you said you didn't want to do a hospital maze, which has been in that space for years. But with a maze like Tooth Fairy, how does that concept and what's the timeline on that? Like, how does that get its beginnings?
Yeah, so multifaceted, right? So there's a multifaceted answer to that question. So during the pandemic, while we were working from home, actually my team and I worked on, we each have like 85 Pinterest boards that we've created of like mazes and attractions that could be. And there are so many different weird things that we came up with when we had nothing but time on our hands and we were locked in our homes that like we really took a look at some of those things, and we hope to bring some of those things to life in the future, which is really exciting. Tooth Fairy is an attraction that existed at Knott's Scary Farm a few years ago. The original maze went to our sister park, California's Great America. And when we were looking at how to dehospitalize urgent scare, we really had two options. We had the Tooth Fairy, which we knew was a thing we really liked, or we had this chaos concept that was like chain link fence and black and white paint and lasers and fog, and those things all kind of exist already in Depths of Darkness. So we really wanted a different experience. The other thing that we really look at is timeline, right? Like you said, the Orlando parks do a great job because they have two separate teams. They have a production and creative team and an operational team. For the most part. Again, I can't speak to all of their business, but for the most part, that's really how they separate it. And that operational team, with the exception of like writing operating guidelines and making sure things are safe, they don't get involved in the creative. Here at Carowinds and at most Cedar Fair parks, Knott's Berry Farm is probably the only exception due to their size and scale. We're doing all of it. So the operators are the producers and the producers are the operators. And we really took a look at what we had on hand. We took a look at what things we could do easily, right? The other piece too, like we talked about on our little park walk, was the thing about a haunt maze, an indoor maze, is the number of people who have to get involved. So depending on the number of walls removed or added, or where doors get flipped to, or fire exits, that requires architects, that requires fire marshals, that requires our safety team, that requires our maintenance team to come in to support those pieces too. We had about 6 weeks to do the Tooth Fairy because, as we talked about, right, we had Carnival and we have a small team. Our decor and production team, we're spending about 2 hours a day in the maze in the middle of the summer, so it was beautifully hot for them. And then they were running floats. They were directing floats, they were driving floats, they were supporting Grand Carnival. So we really, like, when you think of 6 weeks, a good chunk of those 6 weeks were like 2-hour days.
Wow.
So we had to do things that were quick and easy. And we also had to figure out how to make this feel very different than what Urgent Scare felt like. I believe we've accomplished that. Yeah. I believe that we've worked really hard. We've put a lot of new textures on the wall. We've put a lot of new stuff inside. There's a lot more set dressing and props and GAC, as we call it, right? We believe 100% that more is more. And so there was a whole week where we were going to antique shops in the area and just buying stuff. We were going through old props and finding, hey, we're not going to use this anymore. This is a little bit busted. Can we put it in the attraction? So, and again, I think you saw in one of the rooms of the Tooth Fairy, there is a piece from every haunt, which is a really cool Easter egg for those who want it. And so, yeah, then we also have to, so we start our timeline based on when we need to train in it. Because we then, once we start training, we still have 2 weeks of training to make sure the monsters are all set, that everything's safe, that the fire extinguishers are where they need to be, all of those kinds of things. So what really is a 8 to 10 week very quick period is really what we did.
Holy smokes. That is just, it's wild just to know and again, having walked through this, and this is, if you're in the Carolinas area between now and Halloween, and this podcast will come out, I think there's 2 weeks left of SCarowinds at that point when it comes out. If you're here, you got to check it out. You have to see it firsthand because, the way Ryan is describing this Tooth Fairy haunt, I walked through it it would have been last weekend, the weekend before this one. It's very dark in there. but you don't notice half the details. And then we walk through with the lights on, and the detail Ryan just kind of alluded to, where there is a prop from every haunt. He stood in that room and he pointed out every prop to me, and it is just like, for the Carowinds diehards, and there are dozens of us.
Yes. Maybe 13.
Maybe, yeah, 13, absolutely. A spookier number.
Yes.
There's so much good stuff, and if you've been to Scarowinds every year, Tooth Fairy is a maze that it's different.
Yeah.
I think, and I use different as kind of a term of endearment. But what was it about, why did you guys go in the direction of kind of different / creepy? And again, these are adjectives that really don't mean anything, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think when Haunt started, when Paramount started the Haunts in 2000, we looked at Knott's Scary Farm, which had been operating since the mid-70s. People were not able to access horror in the same way they are now, right? When 15, 20 years ago, you had to wait for this time of the year to watch a scary movie or to do a haunted attraction, or right, except for the things that like you might see at like the boardwalk at the beach that like was a quote unquote scary house or haunted house. Like, you didn't get to live in this world. Now there is a full Netflix style on demand program that if you are into horror or haunt or gore, you can watch it tonight. So what we've really had to take a step back in is say, what can I do differently and properly, right? It's my same approach to shows. I can go home and watch Katy Perry's concert on YouTube right now, and I can listen to Katy Perry sing Firework much better and how I think it should be sung than, regardless of how talented my singers or dancers might be, they don't sound like Katy Perry, right? So we've taken that same approach when it comes to haunt, in that blood and gore, while it has a place, right? Slaughterhouse is a great example of that. That is a bloody, gory attraction.
Yes.
And it is done properly. But if it's not all blood or gore, like if there's got to be another element to it. And so you're right, different and creepy are really good words. I want people to come to haunt to feel unsettled, right? I don't necessarily, because again, everyone has a different fear, right? Someone might be afraid of clowns, and they cannot go through Carnival. They will not do it. I have actually one of the techs on my team is deathly afraid of clowns, and so we have to hide the clown props from her so that she can work sometimes. Wow. Yeah. So, I'm deathly afraid of snakes. I will never do a snake attraction because I won't be able to produce that properly. Like, it is a very real fear of mine.
Can you get on Copperhead Strike?
I can get on Copperhead Strike. Are you ready for this, though? You're going to love this. When they were talking about doing, like, the press day from Copperhead Strike, they're like, we're going to bring snakes in. I said, no, you're not. You are not bringing snakes in. And they're like, well, it's a snake-themed ride. And I go, yeah, but you won't have an entertainment manager here to, like, do things with it then. So, right, because that, for me, that's my fear, right? So Tooth Fairy is a play on a few things. Tooth Fairy plays on, for folks like my friend who is really afraid of the dentist, it's a play on that. Tooth Fairy is a play on, like, what happens when, like, you don't believe, right? The Knott's Berry Farm version of the story was about kids not believing. We chose to go with what happens when parents don't believe, or when parents tell their kids not to believe. And there's a little, like, magic in that. And again, it's a little, not Halloween-y, but there's something magical about, like, what happens when you don't believe in a thing. And we can even go deep. What happens if you don't believe in yourself, too, right? That's super deep. We don't have to go that far. Wow. But, like, there's some really interesting stuff inside of Tooth Fairy that I'm excited that our guests get to experience. It is, again, my hope that an attraction like Tooth Fairy is kind of the catalyst for new and next for us. Because, again, I can go home right now and watch a horror movie. I can go home in July and watch a horror movie if I really want to. There are so many suspenseful movies that get released throughout the year that, like, again, there's going to be one released July 4th weekend. We know that. So we've kind of had to take a step back and realize that our guests are inundated with these things. And so how do we pivot from that?
Yeah. And I think kind of Scarowinds as a whole, you and I, again, we're talking, and you've pivoted more from what I'm going to call the cheap scares to kind of the more psychological, and the Depths of Darkness is another maze that kind of relies on that psychological thrill as opposed to the shock factor of the blood and guts or the dead body or anything like that. So,
yeah, I think that's the piece, right? I think that I can't control I can't make something, it's tough to make things look gory properly, right? Especially because this is not a movie set, right? I have to not only, like, do it once for the guest who's looking at it now, but I have to do it for 25 nights, and I have to do it for 10 hours, 25 nights. So yeah, like in a movie, you see this really cool special effect that's done a few times, right? So they can get all the angles, but like I have to live, we have to live that here. So it's a bit of a different experience.
And you know, how many, you mentioned to me, you've got 500 monsters in total, and then, you know, some nights you have as many as 350.
Yeah.
I mean, what's it like working with all of these people? I know when Carowinds was kind of promoting the Become a Monster, it was like go from teacher to zombie, or there was some kind of clever pun here, but what's it like working with all these people from like all these different walks of life who kind of come back to Carowinds and SCarowinds year after year? Yeah,
I'm really proud of our terror team, right? We do believe that anyone can be a monster. From teachers to preachers, everyone has an inner creature. There it is. And we do believe that. And we've got a pretty core group of terror team monsters who have been with us, some since the beginning. I've got 5 or 6 who have been here for 20 years in some way, shape, or form. And I think that there really is a very familiar thing. This is a safe place. This is, again, I talk about, for me, my experience at Disney World. I've got a lot of monsters who have been with us for up to 20 years, which is really exciting. Some of them have been with us from the beginning in some way, shape, or form. And what's really interesting is how safe this place feels for them, how familiar and family-based this experience is for them, because it is, right? This is the place where you get to come be yourself, right? Letting out your inner creature for some people means they get to share pieces and truths of themselves that they haven't shared with anyone else. I love that I get to provide a safe place for people. And sometimes that safe place feels creepy and kooky for some folks, but like for a lot of my terror team, this is coming home. They were all, as most of us were very sad about a lot of things that happened in 2020, not doing Haunt was a really big piece. There's a SCarowinds monster Facebook page that they all share things in, and pictures and posts, and hey, how are you guys doing, all those kinds of things when we're not in operation. And there was a lot of posts of, hey, so-and-so did my makeup in 2017, and here's a picture, and I really loved it, and I just wanted to say thank you to them. So being able to have those folks back on property in 2021 has been really, really great. Yeah,
and this is kind of a backwards transition, but, you know, when you guys couldn't do Haunt in 2020, I mean, obviously the world was we're not going to talk about that, but, you know, what is it? Did the extra year kind of give you guys some, you know, you mentioned everybody was at home and just playing off these Pinterest boards, but did it give you some extra time to kind of concept and come up with new ideas?
Yeah, so we really did have the opportunity to say, what things do we have right now? And what happens if we use those things differently, right? Great example. We had a full conversation about what would a raven's nest, this Edgar Allan Poe themed bird area, be for daytime. And we came up with this whole interesting concept of like, we could have storytellers, or we could have bird acrobats, or we could have interesting food, or we could play with some of these pieces, right? That's really what happens if we have to do a graveyard for the daytime. What does graveyard games look like? And how do we do fun, traditional theme park games, but in a graveyard? What's their theme? What's their story? What props do we need? What kind of prizes do we give away? So we were able to concept some of those pieces that helped us. Again, I think, you know, there's a term blue sky, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where you like create without rules. You just create. And being able to create without rules and with like no actual knowing it wasn't going to happen, let us play with a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something really powerful about play.
For sure. Well, I want to talk some of the live entertainment, and not just Carowinds, but with the Great Pumpkin Fest, which is the daytime family-friendly offerings that Carowinds offers. I was at the park, and while the park was closing and clearing the park for Carowinds, every small child came out of the park with a little tiny pumpkin, like Charlie
and a bag of candy too.
And a bag of candy,
yep, absolutely.
But you know, these live entertainment, these seasonal live entertainment shows, and there's everything from the Meat Cleaver High Pep Rally to the Pirate Games show that you mentioned, and even though you're more scary, I'm going to use scary in air quotes. Nobody can see this because it's an audio medium, but you know, you're scarier, more spooky type shows for Carowinds.
Yeah.
So what goes into the creation of a live show like a Meat Cleaver High Pep Rally or a Queen's Ball?
Yeah, so what we really try to start our conversation with is what are we trying to solve for? What is the root of what we're trying to solve for? A lot of times, Great Pumpkin Fest is a great example of that. When I came in 2017, Great Pumpkin Fest felt like the redheaded stepchild of what the park did, right? Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, Great Pumpkin Fest is a daytime offering, and we put a lot of time, energy, and money into our nighttime offering. No questions asked. But Great Pumpkin Fest should get the same amount of energy. It should get the same amount of care, because there's some families who don't join us for nighttime. There's some families who only join us for Great Pumpkin Fest. So it was really important for us to stop and take a step back and say both of these ticket prices are the same. Both of these experiences should be the same or similar. Like, regardless of whether I'm going through a maze or I'm watching a show, we've got to add to that. So Meat Cleaver High is a great example. So Justin Mabry, who I know you are a big fan of, me too. Shout out Justin Mabry, I love you. He came to me with this idea of like, what would a Halloween drumline be? And I said, well, that's interesting, because I have Haunted Homecoming, which is a show. Then they are the Meat Cleaver Beavers. That's the school that they go to. What if this was their cheer squad? Mm-hmm. What if this was them getting ready for the Haunted Homecoming? And he goes, okay, so who would dance? And we said, well, cheerleaders would dance, maybe football players, or maybe male cheerleaders. And so that's where it came from. So we were able to cultivate this piece. And again, I think that's the other thing. I am not the smartest or most creative person in the room, and I never want to be. I have plenty of great partners who are much more creative and much more smarter and much more innovative than me. So I bring those people to the table. We work through those pieces together. So again, Meat Cleaver High is a great example of that. We also, there are 13 parks in the Cedar Fair family, and we're all doing different things. Whistlin' Willie's Western Wake that we debuted in 2021 is a great example of that. That was a show that Cedar Point has done for the past few seasons, and I love it. I think it is fun, it is campy, and it helps also, fun fact, feed my WinterFest casting too. So that's the other thing that we think through when we're working through is, okay, if I'm doing this show in the fall, I have a very short turnaround for rehearsal, so I need to make sure that I can bring these same people in so that I don't have any hiccups with hiring or onboarding or background checks. So let me check a few boxes all at the same time. Let me figure out what those lineups are. So that's the other piece. There's some pieces. Candy Horns is a great example too that we added this year that we took from our friends at King's Dominion. That's the thing that I really love about entertainment is atmosphere entertainment and bringing each area of the park to life. Mm-hmm. Queen's Ball, though, is a whole other beast, right? Yes. So high production, over the top. We rented a Beyonce concert style rig full of lights and video walls, and it is impressive, and it is meant to be. And we had our friends Kern, who did the parade floats for us for Winterfest Wonderland Parade and Grand Carnival. They built a beautiful set for us. We were able to bring in a choreographer who actually, his name is Joshua Soar. He choreographed Cedar Point's 150th show, which was wild if you saw that. And you can see a lot of the same types of choreography and movement in the two shows. And then I let my costume shop go crazy on designing these looks. I knew exactly what I wanted some of those things to be, but again, I'm not the most creative person. My costume shop's wildly creative, and they built and created some of the most beautiful costumes that I've ever seen. We used we used DJ Seraphin, who did our remix tracks this summer. He built the tracks for Queen's Ball for us. And then Oatvall, who usually does our Cirque shows that are in the Carowinds Theater, they've done Skeleton Crew for us previously. I called them and said, hey, I need 3 specialty Cirque acts. Like, this is what I'm really looking for. What do you have? And they were able to get those performers and artists for us. And so again, I can't do all of that by myself. I don't know who to hire for Cirque. I don't know what Cirque artists to hire, but Oatvall does. I don't know lighting design, but my friend Edward, who did the lighting design for us, does. So I think those are the pieces that are really important, is finding the right fit people to bring my crazy to life. And there's one thing that I really want, and I said this to everyone who was around the production table with me. There's a very specific scene, and I got it. And it was the thing that personified what this show was. And that's that I wanted knife jugglers, which I got. And then I wanted a knife juggler to cut someone's throat with one of their knives. And I got that too. And so that was the piece for me that was the one, as the producer, right, as the creative producer of this whole thing, that was the one piece of vision that I had. The rest of it we can figure out as we're working through it. But that was the one thing I wanted. I wanted there to be a shock value, a sexy value, because I wanted the knife juggler shirtless, which they also are. So that was the one picture I had in my brain, and I got that picture, and everything else kind of fleshed out around it.
Yeah, and we've got a video of the full performance of Queen's Ball on our SCarowinds review article, so go check that out. It's on our YouTube channel as well. But I will say, and I'm not just because I'm sitting right in front of Ryan right now, I am not the type of person who will go see a theme park show in one visit twice. I saw Queen's Ball during my trip to SCarowinds. I kind of caught it. I got there late. I got there right before the show was getting ready to start, so I saw it from kind of a side angle, and I said, this show is awesome. I need to see it again. And I managed to get through the rest of the mazes, get through the rest of the scare zones. I wasn't rushing, but I was eager to get back to see one more performance of Queen's Ball before I left. And I got there 20 minutes early, so I was front row center. And people were asking me when the next show was. And I was like, it's in 20 minutes. Leave me alone. But it is very over the top. It's great. It's among the best theme park shows I've ever seen at a regional theme park. So check that video out, or better yet, the video honestly does it no justice. So come to Carowinds if you can to experience Queen's Ball. I can't say enough good things about it. And again, not just because, right, I told you this Sunday night. I said this show is up there with the Celtic Fire at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. It's the best show I've ever seen at a regional theme park.
Thank you. I'm really proud of it. I think the other piece too is like, I'm not the most creative or smart, so I let my creative people create for me. And the original version of the show was actually a Vogue ballroom show, like 1980s black ballroom queer excellence sort of experience. And then I realized that was a little too me. That was a little too specific. And so my creative team was able to still put those pieces in for me. So like there's an exit track that like is that world. There's choreography that is that world. There's movement that is that world. There's fan dances, which are that world. And I'm really excited that I was able to translate some of the very specific thing that I wanted into something that I think our guests are really enjoying.
Yes, for sure. Let's talk a little bit about your greater. You're talking about you don't want to be the smartest person, the most creative person in the room.
Yeah.
How big is your team here, and like what's it like working with so many people? You mentioned you're either carnies or some combination of carnies and theater kids.
Yeah.
So tell me, let's talk about your team at Carowinds and SCarowinds and WinterFest and your Live E team.
I love my team. I'm very fortunate that I have a team that has grown. So, fun story. My first day at King's Dominion, Paramount's King's Dominion, 2004, little 16-year-old Ryan, 17-year-old Ryan going to HR, and I was like, I'm here for my first day. And I sat there for 20 or 30 minutes, and I went back up to the HR desk and was like, did they forget about me? And the HR person was like, I don't know, let me call. And this stage manager showed up. Her name was Shannon. I will never forget this. And Shannon goes, hey, you Ryan? And I said, yeah, I'm Ryan. And she goes, great, come with me. And we get backstage. And we walked past the what was called the cantina, right, the Foco Caf, and she goes, Ryan, just a quick update for you. They just fired our 2 full-time managers, and we don't know what's going on. So I'm going to get you to the theater, and you're going to sit in the costume shop, and I don't know what you're going to do today. And I go, are you my boss? You're not who I interviewed with. And she goes, no, I'm not your boss. Your boss is in meetings all day. Just sit in the costume shop, and we'll figure it out. It has taken 16 years to get back to a place where these parks have the entertainment leadership necessary. I'm very fortunate that we, outside of Knott's Berry Farm and Cedar Point, I have the largest full-time entertainment leadership program in the park, in the Cedar Fair organization. I have folks who come from Dance World. I have folks who come from floral arranging. I've got folks who are interior designers. I've got folks who are event planners. I've got folks who just graduated from college and know the newest and coolest and best things and understand audio and lighting theories in ways that I never could. I've got folks who have been here at the park for 20 years who know the ins and outs and the secrets and where to hide the bodies and and where the bodies are hidden, right? I'm so fortunate to have a very diverse team of experience, and that is a piece that makes my job 1,000 times easier. I also have a team that understand my crazy and know when I'm being insane, that they can say, that sounds like a Ryan Allen fever dream. Let's see what we can do realistically. I also built a team that are able to say to me, I can't do that, right? And I think that's the important part. I ask a lot of my team. Mm-hmm. I have very high standards for my team. My team has very high standards for themselves. And so I'd rather them say, I can't do this, but here's what I can do instead. And that piece for me is the thing that makes my product what my product is, right? I've got folks on my team who are killer trainers who are so good. Our monster training team this year is predominantly new, and I think that they've cultivated a really great training program for the monsters. I've got a costume shop leader who was with the Rockettes and Cirque du Soleil and on Broadway, and so she's been able to use those experiences to help cultivate new and exciting costumes for me. So I love my team. I love my team, and I love the work that they do because right, like you said, right, those who come from real theater are used to hearing applause every 2 hours when the show ends or when the curtain drops or a big song happens. We get applause every 20 minutes sometimes, or not at all, right? Some of my shows are not meant to be like sat and watch. Atmosphere shows are meant to be enjoyed as you're passing. If you stop and listen for a song or two, so be it. And I've got obviously big high production shows like Queen's Ball that get a lot of applause, but like we have to find value in other ways than our traditional theater brothers and sisters. And then I've also got folks who are carnies, like straight up carnies who, and I say that term with love, but who have also been in theme parks for a long time, who don't know any other world. And this is a place where you can be everything you need to be and then some. So I really, really love that I get to have both of those sets of people on my team.
That's awesome. And I do want to talk about your team because as we were walking through the park today, again, in 8 hours, it's 7.5 now.
Yeah.
WinterFest is coming.
It is.
We got to walk through the WinterFest warehouse today. And when I say it's like a Lowe's Home Improvement or a Sam's Club or a Walmart Christmas section, they all threw up in this one warehouse. It's not a negative thing, but that's what it looked like. And, you know, obviously there's a very quick transition here from Haunt to WinterFest. You've got a season pass holder preview day the first weekend in November. And I don't know, looking at a calendar, Halloween is a Sunday. So you have 6 days between the season pass holder lights and rides preview to, you know, Christmasify an entire park. What can we expect this year from WinterFest?
So again, we are really excited, like you said, for our season pass holders to come the weekend of November 6th and 7th is really exciting. You know, in 2020, we did Taste of the Season, which was a really great way to celebrate the holiday season and get folks out of their homes, and we were able to try some new menus. It was really exciting. But the one piece of feedback we got is that our guests were really sad about the lack of Christmas lights. And so because of that, and because a lot of those guests were season pass holders, we're really excited to open for our season pass holders to see all the lights. All 5 million lights are going to be back up, and we're really excited about it. That will not be a full WinterFest experience. That will just be a lights and rides evening for our guests. The following weekend, we are going to open our atmospheric shows. So things like the Yule Logs and Christmas Bluegrass, Mistletoe, Sounds of the Nativity, as well as all of our decor will be out at that point. The following weekend, the weekend of November 19th, is when we open our big production shows. So that's Cool Yule, Trailer Brand Spectacular, Tinker's Toy Factory, and Holly Jolly Trolley, as well as our brand new show called Sparkle City Swing Machine, a little bit of a Christmas twist on our 2019 hit Spark City Swing Machine. And then the parade, WinterFest Wonderland Parade, opens on Monday, November 22nd. So Santa doesn't even show up until Monday, November 22nd. And he brings the parade with him, which we're really excited for. Our team works really hard to flip the park. And the work that's happening right now is all the prep. Because like you said, we have 6 days. And in those 6 days, we're going to take everything out of the park. All the Halloween stuff will be gone. Nothing Halloween stays up for Christmas, which is great and also exhausting. One of the pieces of this double-edged sword is like by making the park feel as cool and full as it does for Haunt is I can't prep anything for WinterFest in the same way. Right in 2017, we were able to pre-decorate some buildings, get some excitement going. And that was the first year, but we've had to learn how to do that differently. In 2019, we did the Peanut Celebration during this in-between period. And we had to find ways, again, to kind of like hide stuff, to hide Christmas. It's real tough. Again, I'm not the most creative person on my team. My creative people are like, hey, what if we put this in front of this? What if we hide this behind here? What if we build a thing that we can flip to become another thing? So I love that my team gets to do that. So yeah, we'll start. Some things have gone up right now, which is great. Some more things will go up in the next few weeks. And then we will be going crazy starting on November 1st.
I love it. What are you looking forward to most about WinterFest?
I love WinterFest. I love being able to bring and be the host of family traditions. I love being able to, WinterFest has been predominantly the same product since 2017, and I think that's okay. Our season pass holder guests who come every summer, yes, they want some new things every summer, but the WinterFest package is what the WinterFest package is, right? It's the same shows because you watch it with your grandma, or you watch it with your mom, or you watch it with your kids. And those are the exciting pieces for me that I've been able to be part of family traditions with people, right? You've been able to ice cookies with Mrs. Claus. You've been able to write letters to Santa. You've been able to meet Santa. You've been able to see Santa in a parade. Those are all traditions that I'm excited I get to host for people. That's my favorite part of WinterFest.
I love it. And I've got to ask, this is maybe a food and beverage question. The Southern poutine from the...
it's coming back.
It is.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm so excited. So we actually just had a WinterFest meeting last week about kind of what some food and beverage offerings and additions will be. And Taste of the Seasons gave us so many cool and interesting menu items. So yes, that will be back. The pimento grilled cheese will be back.
Perfect.
We're actually adding a candied bacon offering, which we're really excited about. And again, the turducken burger will also be back, which you can't not have WinterFest without a turducken burger.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap this interview up, is there anything else that I think I may have missed or anything else you want to tell our audience kind of about live entertainment? And, one thing you touched on is, you guys compete with roller coasters.
Yeah.
But there is so much more. And I use Carowinds as an example because I'm here a lot. We cover Carowinds. I live in the area. But what is it about? Why should guests be sure to check out live entertainment whenever they're at a park?
I think about, for me, I've got members of my family who don't ride rides, and that's who I produce entertainment for. We jokingly, when the live entertainment managers all get on calls together, we call them the bench seaters, right? The stuff holders, right? We want to make sure those people have just as much of an entertaining experience as the folks who love Fury 325, right? Some people don't like roller coasters, and so if you have an opportunity to sit and enjoy a show, that is my job, to make sure that your experience is complete and that your experience is full. There's tons of great food in this park. There are world-class and some of the best roller coasters in the world here at Carowinds, and I have to compete with those. I think I do an okay job, and I love that I get to compete with those things. I love that I also get to change my experience a lot easier than they do, right? You can't change Fury. Fury is what it is, but I can change my bands every year. I sometimes change my bands every 4 to 6 times a week. You know what I mean? Like I get to bring in new people and new experiences, and I really love being able to do that. So yeah, I absolutely believe that entertainment is part of the whole package of what a theme park is. And I think that if you can take a step and enjoy the whole piece of it, I think you'll see that we're trying to tell the same story as the attraction, right? The Ramblers are a great example of that we brought in this summer. They could have been 2 gorgeous women singing Jolene on guitar, but we gave them they were in a place, they were in Granny's porch, which makes sense in Crossroads. So those are some of the pieces that I would absolutely say, hey, take a step back and just kind of see how this fits into the whole picture. How does it help fill in the coloring book? Okay.
And then this can be a tongue-in-cheek answer. What can we expect during the, coming down the pipeline at Carowinds? I'm obligated to ask that question. You can just wink at me and say there's more coming, but I know there's going to be some really good stuff coming down the pipeline in the future.
There's some really cool stuff coming. I obviously can't talk about most of it.
All of it, probably.
All of it, yeah. The things that are coming are going to continue to make Carowinds the premier entertainment destination of the Southeast.
Perfect. Awesome. Ryan, thank you so much for your time. If you get to Carowinds sometime the end of this year, you can either see SCarowinds or WinterFest. It is well worth your time. Come to Carowinds, check it out. Ryan, if people want to follow you on social media, are you comfortable giving that out?
Absolutely. I'm on Instagram at It's Ryan SA. So I post lots of work stuff, lots of personal stuff. So come on over, come join the party.
Love it. Awesome, Ryan. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sitting down with Ryan was amazing, and in talking to him, it's clear to me how passionate he is for his job and wanting to continue the live entertainment offerings at Carowinds, be that at WinterFest, SCarowinds, Grand Carnival, or any of the live productions he produces. I thank him again for his time, and not only for the podcast, but for some behind-the-scenes features that will be on Coaster101.com very soon if they're not already. That's going to do it for this week's episode of the Coaster 101 podcast. If you're not already, make sure you're following us on social media. We're at Coaster 101 everywhere social media is. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, probably some other channels that don't even exist yet. We don't know. Check us out also on the internet if you prefer the longer form written word at Coaster101.com. And if you're listening, make sure you're liking, rating, reviewing, subscribing to help other people find us. We're going to start reading reviews on this show, and this week we're actually going to start with Dale, aka Lil Dice 504, who writes, "Great Coaster podcast. Very informative and an overall entertaining show. Good guests, and most of all, lots of talks about coasters." Just not this episode. Sorry, Dale. He continues, "A must subscribe for every coaster nerd like myself." Dale, we really appreciate that 5-star review, and if you're listening, keep them coming because We want to read them, and we would love to read your name on the show. Thanks again to Ryan for the time. Thanks again to Dale for that review. And also a quick shout out and thanks to CP Food Blog's son Cameron for listening in study hall when he probably should be studying. We're not teachers or his dad, so we can't tell him what to do, but that just seems like the logical thing. But we appreciate you listening anyway. Thanks, as always, to Justin Mabry and JM Music Design for our theme music, and we will talk to you all again soon. See ya.